Welcome to R&R Living Life. What a way to start the day, with a stunning sunrise. The gradual awakening of the morning with a cool chill in the air. Nothing better than to watch with a steaming cup of coffee. Such a stunning morning as the sun lit up the marbles close to the camp. As we left Kalu Kalu, Devil's Marbles, we made our way to the day use area for a view over the site. It was just as amazing. No matter how many times I looked out across this incredible area, I was engulfed by the sheer magnitude of it. Seeing the marbles in the softer morning light from near black, then through the slowly changing hues of sunrise with its deep reds and oranges as the morning awoke, was a sight to remember. As we continued up the Stuart Highway, the scenery was so fresh looking after having had the dust washed off by recent rains. We passed Bonnie Well, one of only 3 remaining stock wells on the north-south stock route, first dug in 1878-79 by Arthur and Alfred Giles when they were overlanding sheep to Springvale Station. The well was deepened between 1883-84 with a stone dump, the structure built around the top of the well, and a whip system added in 1892. The stone dumps are still intact. The whip system no longer remains, but a tank stand and evidence of the location by debris from the era are still present. A bore, windmill and tank installed in the late 1930s and a later cement tank provides a good example of that era in the territory's industrial heritage when bores replaced wells as the principal means of water supply for stock. Along the eastern side of the highway we saw evidence of flood rubbish and washed and deeply gouged shoulders, so there must have been a huge amount of water that flooded the area earlier in the year. We crossed kilometres of long stretches of floodways, highlighting just how flat this country is. We were driving into an easterly wind that was quite blustery on occasions, giving Gidget a forceful shove every now and then. Even the edges of the bitumen were severely eroded in places. We stopped for fuel in Tennant Creek, with a history shaped by gold mining, Aboriginal culture and pastoralism. The town, now so very different from when we were last in the area over 25 years ago, has developed from its rough, tough droving and gold mining days into a modern town. It was named after a nearby watercourse of the same name. Originally a telegraph station in the late 19th century, the town later saw a gold rush in the 1930s, leaving behind numerous remnants of mining infrastructure and abandoned equipment scattered around the town. The Battery Hill Mining Centre, the site of Australia's last major gold rush in the 1930s, is full of the region's rich mining history. Established in 1872 as part of the Overland Telegraph Line, the Tennant Creek Telegraph Station is a significant historical site that played a vital role in connecting Australia to the rest of the world with its revolutionary advancements in communications. This isolated outpost was one of a series of stations built to maintain and relay messages along the 3,200 kilometre telegraph line. The well-preserved stone buildings provide insight into the daily lives of the telegraph operators and their families who lived and worked in extreme isolation. Surrounded by rugged landscapes and red earth, the site is a peaceful yet poignant reminder of Australia's pioneering history. Around 25 kilometres from Tennant Creek we passed the Three Ways Roadhouse at the junction of the Stuart and Barkly highways. A local point of interest is the Reverend Flynn Memorial, a 20-foot stone obelisk featuring a cross at its peak and bronze plaques at its base detailing the life and achievements of John Flynn, founder of Australian Inland Mission and the Royal Flying Doctor Service. Originally the pillar sat at the exact meeting spot of the Barkly and Stuart highways, but the point has now been moved 250 metres north after the T intersection was realigned. Reverend John Flynn, or Flynn of the Inland, was virtually responsible for the establishment of the Flying Doctor Services and the wireless communication for those services throughout the isolated areas of Australia. As well as tending to matters spiritually, he quickly established the need for medical care for residents of the vast Australian outback and established a number of bush hospitals. We were now well and truly on the Barkly Tablelands that extends into Western Queensland. The huge expanse of land covers more than 240,000 square kilometres, roughly the same size as the United Kingdom or New Zealand, and supports some of Australia's notable outback cattle stations. It runs as far south as Barrow Creek, north past Elliot, and west into the Tennant Desert. The first non-Indigenous person to enter the area was William Landsborough, who in 1862 named the area for Sir Henry Barkly, then the Governor of Victoria. With the completion of the overland telegraph line in 1872, it led to increased settlement in the region. The Tablelands is a poorly defined region, with the name, when properly applied, refers to the extensive areas of largely treeless, cracking black soil plains with small bedrock hills, and supporting grasslands dominated by mitral grass, which is crucial for cattle grazing and has a semi-arid subtropical climate. What little water there is drains into the porous limestone beneath the clay soils, forming lakes and swamps in some areas. I have read that some people think the area as pretty much nothing, but that was far from the truth. When I went to live on the Barkly Tablelands, a friend told me that it takes around 6 months for people to decide whether or not they like the lay of the land or would hate it. I can honestly say it quickly grew on me. It can certainly be a region of extremes, from bitterly cold windy days in October, though when sheltered hot, to virtually windless hot dusty days a couple of days later. But the vast open spaces with stunning sunrises and full moons that fill the horizon are something else. What seems like endless open plains of waving grass, gilgais, those depressions in the black soil, the mirages on the horizon, the huge flocks of budgerigars on the waterholes, wedge-tail eagles beside the drain outside the fence not able to take off in the heat, even the gently turning blades of the windmills, to the slowly flowing floodwaters as it makes its way down the river. The list seems endless. Those crisp, clear days during winter and the not so enjoyable hot days of summer are hard to forget. I can be forgiven for forgetting the dust, the flies, and the heat. We passed a haul road from the Bootu Creek mine, an owner-operated magnesium ore mine that was mined conventionally via an open-cut method of mining, blasting, and excavation using hydraulic excavators and dump trucks. Exploration of the mine site commenced in 2001, with drilling completed in 2004 and mining operations commencing at the end of 2005. In December 2022, mining operations ceased after reaching their natural end of mine life, and since January 2022, the mine has subsequently been placed in care and maintenance mode. As we neared Tompkinson Creek, we saw evidence of where heavy rains had washed beside the bitumen. The countryside was forever changing, and was not what I had expected, as I had thought it would be more like the Tablelands Highway, with vast open mittelgrass plains, so was surprised by the scenery. The open downs and forest country had certainly benefited from good rainfall with lush pasture growth. Out here on the Tablelands, company-owned cattle stations dominate, with the likes of Brunette and Rockhampton Downs, Banker, Newcastle Waters, Wave Hill and others, all worth in the millions of dollars, certainly not for the average landholder to purchase. Some would say assets rich, cash flow poor in prolonged drought conditions, though certainly not with the present conditions. We drove through savanna woodlands with patches of golden grasslands, stony ridges and speargrass covered plateaus, and areas where the remains of burnt trees were evident. About 11 kilometres south of Renner Springs was Attack Creek, a monument marking a place where explorer John McDowell Stuart encountered hostile Aborigines on his first attempt to cross Australia. Our next stop was at Renner Springs, in the heart of the Barkly Tablelands cattle country. Like many other places along the Stuart Highway, it owes its origins to the overland telegraph line. It was named after Dr. Frederick Renner, who was dispensing medical advice to the team working on the telegraph line when they passed through the springs in 1872. In 1877, Dr. Renner saw a flock of birds while working on the line and found that the birds were drawn to the area by the natural springs where fresh water bubbled up from underground, which he named Mud Springs, later renamed Renner Springs after Dr. Renner. The area is rich in history, and the lagoon and springs still support a large range of natural bird life. The Renner Springs Desert Inn was established in the 1950s, with the roadhouse building an old army hut relocated after World War II from the Army staging camp at Banka Station, a sprawling 141,600 hectare cattle station 50 kilometres away. The hut dates from 1885. This historic pub and roadhouse, with the Desert Inn focusing on the natural environment and local culture, while the roadhouse provided modern amenities and refuelling opportunities. Renner Springs is usually regarded as the border between the tropical top end and the temperate red centre regions. Further on, we pass the turn-off to the Barkly stock route that connects the Stewart and Tablelands highways and provides access for cattle producers in the area, serving as a crucial link in the region's transport network. 20 kilometres further on was Elliot, approximately halfway between Darwin and Alice Springs, originally known as Number 8 Bore Newcastle Waters, then renamed uniquely after Army Lieutenant Snow Reginald Douglas Elliot, who established Number 7 Australian Personnel Staging Camp in the area with the assistance of the local Jingili Aboriginal people. Elliot was used as a luncheon point for northbound convoys on their third day out of Alice Springs and travelling between Banka Staging Camp and Larrimah, or a first day overnight stop for southbound convoys from Larrimah. The camp had the capacity to shelter 1,500 men, and due to the availability of bore water, contained vegetable gardens, with a field bakery ensuring a ready supply of fresh bread. Relics of wartime movements around the town remain. The town sits on the edge of Newcastle Water Station and is predominantly a service centre for the surrounding pastoral properties. Elliot was also the centre of droving country, where many of the droving legends of the Barkly, Murrinjai and the north-south stock routes were forged. In 1917, 13 water bores were sunk in the area to provide a stable water supply to passing drovers and their cattle herds. Unlike the nearby town of Newcastle Waters, Elliot survived the death of droving by being on the Stewart Highway when it was sealed. From being once a thriving little town, it now seems to be a town forgotten. Our next stop was Newcastle Waters Township, a historic semi-abandoned ghost town known for its role as a historic droving hub, part of the vast, well-watered 10,353 square kilometre Newcastle Waters Station on the Barkly Tablelands. When roads, as we know them, were non-existent, rail networks were in their infancy, and meatworks or abattoirs were geographically distant, droving along cattle stock routes and the overland telegraph line saw the movement of large herds of cattle from the Kimberley down the tracks. With increased upgrading of the government wells along the Murrinjai and the Barkly stock routes, droving plants led by legendary Boss drovers found Newcastle Waters the perfect location to seek respite before continuing their journey. Whether they had just survived the Murrinjai or were heading west to the Kimberley after traversing from either South Australia or Queensland, this was the place to purchase required stores for their journey and to refresh themselves at the Junction Hotel. From around 1920, the Newcastle Waters Township, originally established as a depot for the construction of the bores and later on the maintenance of these bores, began to develop. It was not until 1930 that the Commonwealth Government resumed 3 square kilometres from Newcastle Waters pastoral lease for the town site. The town was surveyed and saw the eventual establishment of the Junction Hotel, a general store, police station that was already in existence from around 1914, a church, an airport featuring a Qantas service, and a post office. Circa 1934, Jones's store opened. This early established business served as a general store, butchery, bakery, and poultry business, and thrived as a supply point at the junction of major droving routes as drovers rested and resupplied before continuing on their grueling overland cattle drives. However, with the introduction of road trains in the 1960s, rendering droving obsolete, the township, economically dependent on the droving, reduced to a virtual ghost town and was no longer inhabited. While living on the Barkly, we had a drover come through with a mob of cattle destined for Queensland, a stark reminder of bygone days. Rick and I wandered the township, rich in droving history, and spent time reading the information panels in the preserved Junction Hotel and Jones's store, where reminders of the pioneer era abounded. We walked to the Drovers Memorial Park with its bronze statue of a drover. Unfortunately, the information board was very hard to read. The traditional owners of Newcastle waters became the fourth Indigenous group in the Northern Territory to gain native title over both the old township and parts of the station, covering a total area of 30,000 square kilometres. As we crossed the causeway over Newcastle Creek connecting the station complex and township to the highway, we passed Lake Woods, one of the largest inland draining freshwater lakes in the Northern Territory, with water still flowing under the causeway. The lake is particularly significant for supporting large numbers of water birds, with magpie geese, Pacific black ducks and grey teals commonly found in and around the water, and large numbers of wading and fishing birds like pelicans, straw-necked ibis and royal spoonbills seen in the area. Rick and I will leave you here at Newcastle Water Station as we make camp on the Old Stewart Highway. Join us for our next leg of our travels to Katherine. I hope you have enjoyed this episode as much as we have. Give us a thumbs up if you have. Stay safe and enjoy life. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R Living Life.